Last week in the courtyard after church, someone stopped me and said, half joking and half serious, "You're not just going to talk about pain, are you?" And so I told this person that I was going to describe a really dark time in my life. But more importantly, I was going to share how this suffering brought back life back into my life. The journey wasn't pretty and it wasn't easy, but it was definitely transformative and definitely worth it. So, with that said, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. 7 years ago, I was working as a physical therapist and teaching at a university, taking care of my husband and my 2 children who were teenagers. And it was 1 week before we were going on a bus tour of Europe when I started to hurt. It felt like my bladder was extremely full and somebody was sitting on my stomach, and my nervous system seemed to be set in overdrive. The bladder has more pain fibers than any other organ in the body, and usually they're silent. But when they wake up, watch out. Of all the pain I endured, nothing rivaled bladder pain, and even at low levels, it instigated a primal kind of panic. The muscles inside and outside of my pelvic area went into a major spasm, and there was a knot deep inside that was big and hard as a marble. I worked for over 5 years to get better, and during the first 2 years of pain it was debilitating, and I saw a different doctor or therapist almost every day of the week. I tried everything from Western medicine, and when I wasn't getting better, I gradually adopted interventions from Eastern and alternative sides of medicine too. So you can take a little breath, because now most of my days are completely pain-free without medications. But this journey in my life was more than just becoming pain-free. To my surprise, the healing extended beyond my body to my full person, and it transformed both my inner and my outer life in dramatic and positive ways. Now I see my pain as a gift. But don't get me wrong, this was the most difficult challenge in my life so far, and I needed tremendous help in this healing process. But when I compare the state of my body, mind, and spirit before my illness to now, I would never want to go back. Because the journey was rocky, but the rewards were unexpected and amazing. Recently, I heard the term post-traumatic growth, and I thought, oh, that's what happened to me. So I wanted to use the term today, so I went online and I looked it up. And I found that it's actually been researched by a group of psychologists at the University of North Carolina. And they define post-traumatic growth as a positive change experienced as a result of the struggle with a major life crisis or a major traumatic event. On their website, they have a few clarifications. The first is, just because you experience growth doesn't mean you're not going to suffer, because distress is typical when we face traumatic events. They also clarify that traumatic events aren't good. But for many of us, life crises are inevitable, and we have this choice. Are we going to suffer and grow on one hand, or suffer and not have any change on the other? So today I'm presenting the possibility of post-traumatic growth to give us a reminder and a hope that during the rough times in our life, there is more than pain and suffering there. So they found that people who experience growth through tough times tend to look at what they're carrying emotionally, and they actually take time to process it. This was true for me. I had to work at the body level to deal with the bladder inflammation, the muscle spasms, and the nervous system that was out of control. But that wasn't enough, because in order to get better, I also had to look at the emotional things that I was carrying that was creating stress in my body, a ramp up of my nervous system, and the continuation of my pain. A few of my friends told me, "Oh yeah, Mary Ruth, we know your experience was valid, but we're not going to go there ourselves." And I completely understand this resistance because I was 45 and completely debilitated with pain for over 2 years before I would admit that maybe, just maybe, there might be an emotional component to my illness. But eventually, and with lots of help, I looked within. And over the years, I realized that I had shut down the feminine, emotional, intuitive, and sexual sides of me, and I gradually worked to open back up. Then 5 years into my illness, I had the gift of knowing how it all began when memories of being raped by the priest who was the hero of my childhood surfaced. It was so difficult to believe these memories, but then they were completely validated by my siblings, and they matched all the memories I kept. And now much of my life made sense. I understood why my pain landed right in the pelvic area and why it began right as my father died. It seemed like I was finally able to look at what I was carrying now that my parents were gone. So for me, the pain was not just a sign that my body was breaking down, it was also a signal that it was time to look, it was time to process, and it was time to heal.